This is the regular City Council meeting of Monday, June 21st, 2021. It is now 8:03 p.m. I would like at this time, if we could, everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So again, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I would like to ask our city clerk to confirm that we have a quorum this evening.
Yes, Mayor, we do have a quorum. Councilmember Debumalo, are you on? My screen is not showing your name, so I just want to confirm that you're the... Okay, so Mayor, I think she is the only one that is not on. Everyone else is on the meeting.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, so everyone. At this time, I'll entertain any agenda additions, deletions, or amendments.
Mr. Mayor, could we move item number?
Yes.
Can we move item number C off of the consent agenda to old business or to new business, please?
Item C from the consent agenda to the old business.
Thank you.
That was a motion. Did I hear a second?
So I believe with consent agenda items, we don't need to formally second or vote to remove them from the consent agenda?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay. I thought historically that's how we've done it. All right, we will move that item to the old business. Are there any other agenda additions, deletions, or amendments? Hearing none, we will now move on to citizen participation. City Clerk?
We have no comments received for this evening, Mayor.
Thank you, City Clerk. We will now go to presentations, and for Pride Month, we will turn it over to the Diversity Committee.
Thank you, Mayor Adams. Good evening, Mayor Adams, council members. I am Elvita Dixon. I chair the Diversity Committee for the City of Bowie. And on behalf of the Diversity Committee, we have a presentation each month known as Heritage Month to increase awareness and understanding of various groups. And in the month of June, we are recognizing Pride Month, the LGBTQIA+ community, and also in June is designated as Caribbean American Month and Immigrant Heritage Month. However, we are focusing on Pride Month this month. Pride Month is celebrated throughout the United States in the month of June to recognize the diversities within the LGBTQIA+ community and to raise awareness of the human and civil rights inequities still faced by its members. Pride Month is symbolized by a rainbow-colored flag, and also it includes different colored flags for different identities. Now, Pride Month has been celebrated in June since the uprising at the Stonewall Inn in New York City on June 28, 1969, which prompted protests and riots after police raided a gay nightclub. The uprising increased awareness of the laws that were targeting drag queens and criminalizing them for masquerading as women. Following the uprising, two transgender activists, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, took up the fight for transgender rights. A monument to commemorate their work will be placed in Greenwich Village, and the Stonewall Inn has been declared a national landmark. Now, although the laws are changing, in practice, many members of the LGBTQIA plus community still experience harassment, discrimination, and are the victims of hate crimes. We can overcome these issues by becoming more aware, being supportive of anti-hate crime laws, and being appreciative of the contributions of the LGBTQIA plus members to our community. They are our leaders, politicians, teachers, doctors, entertainers, authors, athletes, parents, and more. The 2020 presidential primary saw its first openly gay candidate run for president, Pete Buttigieg. He now serves as the U.S. Secretary of Transportation and is the first openly gay cabinet member in our country's history. Other famous members of the LGBTQIA plus community include author James Baldwin, news commentators Rachel Maddow and Anderson Cooper, actress Laverne Cox, and Emmy Award-winning writer Lena Waithe. And I just found out today that the Las Vegas Raiders have a player, Carl Nassib, who has come out as the first openly gay NFL player. Locally, fashion designer Christian Siriano hails from Annapolis, Maryland. Transgender top model Isis King is from Prince George's County. And lifelong Bowie resident, our own council member Michael Esteve, has been serving District 1 faithfully and commendably since 2015. So we celebrate with the LGBTQIA plus community for Pride Month in the month of June. Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on. I see nothing for city boards and committees. Is that correct?
Correct, Mayor.
At this time, I will go to council announcements. I have a couple that I'd like to start off with. And first, I would like to congratulate the Bowie girls under 13 soccer team for winning their district divisional championship. So congratulations to you, as well as to the Bowie boys under 8 soccer team for winning their divisional championship. So to all the parents and coaches, we'd like to commend you and congratulate you on a great season. I'd also like to just wish a belated happy Father's Day to all the fathers and all those who serve in that capacity, to young people all over. Again, a belated happy Father's Day to you. Any other council announcements at this time? Congressman Harrison?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening. Just a couple of quick announcements. I just wanted to share with everyone that we completed the interviews for the Bowie Youth Council, and we want to thank all the students who interviewed. They were very, very impressive, and we will certainly be getting back to you very soon. Also, reminder that our next regular meeting will be held on Tuesday, July 6th, and it will be in council chambers. So we look forward to seeing and welcoming back the public at that time. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much. Any other comments from any council members at this time? Hearing no other announcements, we will move on to the city manager's report. City manager?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and residents out there in television land. Staff is working hard toward getting ready for the reopening. As you may be aware, we're going to open all of our facilities on July the 1st, and so all of our departments are preparing to do all of the things that are necessary to make sure that we're ready for that, and it's been a long 16 months. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, City Manager. At this time, we will move on to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please respond with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, the motion carries. We will now move on to the old business. First up is adoption of Ordinance 0221, amending the adopted budget for the fiscal year. At this time, I will turn it over to staff for any comments at this time.
Ms. Matthews?
Good evening, Council, Mayor.
Good evening.
This is H. Byron Matthews, the Finance Director for the City of Bowie. This evening, Mayor and Council, we come to you with Emergency Ordinance 0221, authorizing the transfer of certain funds within the FY21 budget. Most of these items have come to you through regular council meetings and during the budget work session. We've taken the liberty of pointing out those items that were in excess of $25,000 or more. And we have listed them in the memo, excuse me. And just to briefly touch upon a few of those, Mayor, this is a process that we do each year. This is done so that we can right-size our original budget based on new estimates and unforeseen activities that happen throughout the fiscal year. Our first comment to you falls in the human resources area. We had a full-time position that was being transferred from the police department that was not accounted for in human resources. So we just wanted to move that money from the police department to the human resources department. Next on the list was increased cost in repair and maintenance for police vehicles. Public Works noticed an increase in professional services due to the influx of plans submitted for Melford and South Lake, in addition to other smaller developments. Solid waste, we needed to transfer additional funds to cover temporary labor in solid waste due to COVID-related absences. That transfer amount is $37,000. In addition, disposal fees were a lot higher than we anticipated. That was mostly due to an increase in the tonnage, in the cost of the tonnage, and in addition to during the COVID period, a lot of residents thought that might be a good time to clean house, and so they did, and more trash to dispose of. The next fund, Equipment Acquisition and Replacement Fund, as you know, is really where we manage our vehicles and mobile equipment. Here, we needed to replace a couple of vehicles due to accidents, and also replace some damaged equipment in parks and grounds. The next fund is Capital Projects Fund. The Chesapeake Saddlebrook Stream transfer of $26,000 is requested for additional work incurred at that particular project. And an additional $40,000 for stormwater management at Glen Allen Pond. The next fund is water and sewer, and we're asking for an additional transfer of $35,000. Excuse me, for a low lift pump. And in the wastewater division, we're looking for electrical upgrades that were higher than we projected in our original budget as far as cost is concerned. So we're requesting to transfer $60,000 to that line item. These transfers, Council and Mayor, do not increase the amount of the original budget that you approved. It only reallocates some of those monies from places that were underspent to places that were overspent. And with that, I would like to ask council and mayor's approval for the transfer resolution for FY21. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Matthews. At this time, if there are no questions, I will open the public hearing. Do we have any comments?
No, Mayor, no comments were submitted for this public hearing item.
Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. And we'll entertain a motion to accept the ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to accept the transfers as proposed.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor, respond with an aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same favor.
Aye.
And you have the vote, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir, I do. I have a unanimous 7-0.
Okay, we know the motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, we'll now move on to adoption of ordinance 0321. Now we'll turn it over to council, at least to city staff.
Jamie, proceed.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is Jamie Braun, Code Compliance Supervisor. The ordinance amendment 0321 was prepared to address several concerns about trash in Bowie, including litter, turkey vultures, and refuse and trash storage. The two most impactful changes are that 1, trash will now be required to be at the curb in cans for collection, and 2, if you live in an attached dwelling with no side yard, you may store your trash cans in front of the house as long as they are screened from view. The majority of residences in Bowie currently have outdoor refuse and trash containers because it has always been a requirement to store trash and refuse in cans with lids. We expect adding the requirement that trash and refuse be in cans with lids for collection will combat the litter and refuse remnants in the neighborhoods on collection days. As noted, many surrounding cities also have this requirement. The remainder of the revisions are to add definitions to complement those changes and incorporate current collection requirements like wrapping mattresses in plastic and bagged yard waste must be in paper. Thank you for your consideration.
Hey, thank you so very much. Any questions from council? Hearing none.
Yes. Yeah, I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Go right ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of concerns about this. First of all, the changes are pretty significant from what our residents are currently accustomed to. Yes, we do presently have a majority of people who are putting their cans out with with trash properly stored within the cans. But these are changes that I think will probably need to be socialized, if you will, with the community over a bit more time than just 30 days here that is actually mentioned in the ordinance. So I have a little concern about the timeliness and making sure people are aware of this. The other part is I am concerned about the requirement that everything be in a can. I know that myself, I typically don't have a problem from week to week. However, when things get busy, holiday time frame, guests visiting, general cleanup in the house, clearing out the garage, all of that sort of thing, all of a sudden, I don't have enough cans to be in a position to put everything in a can. How is a resident supposed to address such a circumstance?
So our attempt was we defined refuse so that, things like larger things won't have to be in a can. So that's why we defined refuse as, normal household trash. And, during the holiday season, obviously, we use our common sense. And when it comes to enforcement, this is for the day-to-day issues that we're having with the turkey vultures getting into these trash, the bags and spreading it all over the neighborhood. And so we're trying to combat the everyday things, not those anomalies. We do expect that we're going to have a advertisement campaign, and certainly for the first 3 to 6 months, we would do courtesy notices, certainly like we do with trash can notices now. We have a courtesy notice that gets, posted on the front door that says, this is the new law and this is what you need to do, and we wouldn't go out guns blazing quite yet. So again, we're just trying to deal with the daily issues.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, but that still leaves residents in a position where the law says that I've got to have my refuse in a can, and I'm unable to comply. And I think it's unfair to limit the amount of trash that someone is able to put out in these circumstances. Is there something that can be done to address that in terms of maybe the nature of the bags? If I know that there was some language in there about contractor trash, heavy bags or something along those lines, because there are plenty of times when we have, and I know I have a neighbor across the street who regularly has more, I'd say maybe 25-30% of the time has more trash than he has trash cans, and he's dutiful about not putting things out that would attract the turkey vultures or animals or things like that. That sort of rubbish goes into a proper can, but I think we need to figure out how we can address that issue for our constituents before we start putting this kind of limitation in place. I do, by the way, just this weekend, as a matter of fact, a neighbor was contributing to the problem, if you will, and there was, just one of these lightweight kitchen trash bags, and I think that's where we have the majority of our problems, is with people who are putting out these lightweight bags. And sure enough, as I came home, there was a turkey vulture who was having a fairly good time at cracking open that bag, which I've, of course, subsequently put in my own trash can. But nonetheless, I do think we need to find some other alternative other than to eliminate people's ability to have excess trash here.
Are you finished, Councilman?
Yeah, well, I guess I should finish up. Is what other opportunities do we have to try and define some parameters for people who find themselves in that circumstance? Can we do it based on non-food items?
So we already addressed what can be recycled in the city's recycling. So we imagined that the majority of the trash that is not food waste is recycling items, and so it wouldn't be considered, refuse, again, as we defined it. So I'm going to look at how we defined refuse here so that it's a little bit clearer. We thought that we got it pretty well, but if it needs to be changed, we change it. Going to the wrong spot here. So refuse shall mean food scraps and other household waste of any size able to be contained in the household refuse container, including wrapped diapers, but not including rubble, brick, stones, construction debris, unwrapped diapers, or sewage, all of which the city will not collect, or yard waste or metal items, which the city collects separately. So we thought that that kind of covers the food scraps and household waste that we're intending upon going into those containers, and the other items such as wrapping paper and things that are recyclable would go into the recycling containers.
But there's a huge amount of other things that go in there. I mean, I undertake things all the time, whether it's anything from rags to pieces of wood to other things that I put in the trash that I may not have room for. And
right, so those aren't defined as refuse according to this code change. So that would not be included as what is required to go in the can.
So, all right, take me back. Where is that section on the definition?
So we added it to D. It is section 2, D.
All right. But that just means refuse shall mean food scraps and other household waste, which could be anything. Household waste could be anything like a piece of wood or a broken toy or anything along those lines, right?
So construction debris, I would consider wood to be construction debris, and that's not considered refuse by this definition. Again, I can defer to Alyssa, but we thought that we were going to combat that concern with the defining of refuse in the way that we did.
Okay.
So if I've got
anything else?
Yeah, so if I've got a whole bunch of a box of old toys and things like that that are rubbish and so forth, how does that get out of this? How is it okay for me to put that in a trash bag?
I would think that would be loose trash that would be collected. So kids' toys and couches and things like that, those are regular trash collection items that are regularly put out for in a loose situation. They're not put in the trash cans. But again, if it doesn't fall under that food scraps and household waste, I feel that it would be permitted to be put out. And again, if it's not attracting the turkey vultures and the rodents and the litter problem, then I think that's the whole point that we're trying to make here, is that everything that is going to be a problem is going to be in a trash can with a lid.
Okay. Thank you. City Attorney?
Yeah, so when we were drafting this, it was in fact my understanding that everything that household waste is waste from a household, and I believe it would include the items mentioned by Councilmember Wolfley. It was my understanding that the city wanted everything that fit in a trash can to go in a trash can. If in fact it is our intention to allow some items that are small enough to go into a trash can, not to go into a trash can, then I do think we need an amendment to this. But I think council needs to make a decision about what exactly you want in the trash can.
Okay. Any other council member with a question before or any comments at this point?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Please go right ahead, Councilman of Staff.
Thank you. This is a question less for Ms. Braun and more for city staff as it relates to our communications personnel. Is there any way that we could delay the implementation of these changes to allow ourselves a couple of months to communicate not only these updates to residents, but also to just communicate about code generally? I appreciate that we've been doing a good job putting out some videos and updates on our various channels. We were in the habit of starting recently with quarterly postcard mailings to all households, which is pretty thorough and direct. I'm wondering if we couldn't do a new postcard mailing this summer that focuses on code-related issues, including these updates. Is that something that staff thinks is feasible?
I'll chime in. Sure, yes, we can do that. That's not a problem. I mean, if you all pass this and you set for example, you said it's going to be effective September 1st, and the next 2 months we will communicate to the residents what the changes will be, and that would be one of the methods, and videos too.
Perfect. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Quick question.
Yes, can I just add one thing to what Councilmember Stebb mentioned for Mr. Lott's consideration? Also, you know, there's been many complaints about the cans being thrown in the road, and also cans being pulled between cars and scratching up the cars. So if there's something we can do to help alleviate that problem, that would be great. And just kind of keep the residents informed of what's happening with that issue.
Yes, we can certainly work on that. I did talk.
City manager.
Well, I did talk with a resident in the East section about the car being scratched issue, and I think we worked that out. And we can talk to our solid waste guys about pushing the cans closer to the curbs when they pick them up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Councilwoman. I think one of the things I'd say about this is understanding that we need to be, managed by rules and not by the exception. I think we would probably always have some exceptions for people, but what's going to happen with the amount of refuse and things they will have. And I think our code enforcement will be able to look at that. I think what we're really looking at is those who are habitually doing this and not the one-timers or every now and then, as we talked about, putting a warning. But I also think Councilmember Stebb made a very good point, and I think Councilmember Wolfield, making sure we give people enough time to prepare and understand what we're trying to do. I think it is a challenge for us all around, but I think the importance of keeping the city beautiful, cutting down the rodents, and all those pests that come along with trash being out and being strewn all over the neighborhood, that we have to address that. And we know we may run into the exception, as is always with almost any rule we make. There will be exceptions, but I think we do need to make sure everyone is prepared for this and give them a shot. Any other questions or comments from council?
Yeah, I have a...
Councilmember Wolfie, I believe you...
Thank you. This is a question for Alyssa. What I think I heard you say was that you constructed the language in this in this proposal here, in this change to the code, such that it would require everything to be in a can that could be in a can. And then what I heard from staff was that that was not the intention.
That is what I understood the intention to be. If it's not, I would agree that it needs amendment, that it includes everything except the things that are mentioned: rubble, brick, stones, construction debris, unwrapped diaper and sewage, and yard waste or metal items.
Is this something that, Jamie, that you could go back and work with council to resolve this?
Councilman, in order to do that, we need to have clearer direction from you collectively as to what you do and don't want in the garbage cans.
Okay.
Thank you, the attorney.
All right, so in that case, Jamie,
Gardner.
I think I'll recognize Councilmember Gardner right now. He hasn't had a chance to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Wolfrey, perhaps we may want to table this then for a later meeting so that you can give more detail and maybe consult with both the EAC and the Green Team to get further direction.
sounds like a good idea to me.
So any other comments or questions from any other council members? Okay, at this time, hearing none, I believe we need to open the public hearing unless I hear otherwise.
Mayor, I'm sorry, Mayor, there were no comments submitted for this public hearing this evening.
Okay, I declare the public hearing closed. I will entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to table ordinance 03-21 until our next meeting to allow time to work with staff and council on clarification of the language.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we table to the next meeting until council has a chance to speak with and work with, I believe, with Jamie as well as our city attorney. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor, respond with an aye.
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 Opposed, same favor. I'm sorry, opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. We will now go on to adoption of resolution R3221. And at this time, I will turn it over. For any comment at this time?
Mayor, it's item C is KFC at Karington Plaza. It's
No,
not
I was
a resolution.
C as in Charlie.
It should be
Adoption of resolution R3221.
No, it's the KFC at Karington Plaza.
That's item D as in dog. On my agenda, I had that as item D.
Oh, that is correct.
What do we have? Please, Alyssa, what do you have on the agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
If I may, I believe there's...
Forgive me, Mayor, I was trying to answer your other question. Could you repeat the question?
Oh, I was saying, I go by the city clerk, but I was letting the city clerk know that as we were going through the items, I saw adoption of resolution R3221 on my agenda, And she's saying no, that it's, the next item up was item D, which was the KFC. And
Nope, you're correct. There's resolution 3221.
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Manager. We should proceed with that. Joe, are you ready?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and members of the council. For the record, I'm Joe Minert, the City Planning Director, and this is an item that council discussed at your last meeting on June 7th. And there was some discussion about the number of parking spaces that were included to be waived in the parking departure. This is for the South Lake multifamily section, and council held the item over. This item was a companion case to another case which involved the size of the parking spaces, reducing the width of the parking spaces, and council did approve that resolution on June 7th agenda. This recommendation has come to you from the Bowie Advisory Planning Board with a recommendation for approval, and basically council is it's on the agenda tonight for council to take final action. The attorney is here also tonight if there are any questions, Mr. Arthur Horn, and that concludes our presentation.
I think at this point, I will make a motion, but first I do want to go with moving that we accept.
Are we having discussions?
R3221 as prescribed by the city staff.
Mr. Mayor, if I may we ask questions of staff first before we go to the motion part?
Oh, I was going to do a discussion, and you'll be able to ask those questions then.
Mr. Mayor, I second.
All right, it's been moved and properly second. Discussion. Any council members with questions?
Yes.
Councilmember Wolfley, and I don't know what it is, Councilmember, maybe it's the spare. If you could speak a little louder, or if the IT could turn it up a little bit, I think all of us are kind of nodding heads. It's a little hard to hear you this evening. Thank you. Councilmember Wolfley, go ahead.
Thank you. Question for staff. So this is reducing from 738 down to 587. What is the rationale for that reduction?
Councilmember Wolfley, as we discussed at the June 7th meeting, there are provisions in the zoning ordinance that relate to waivers of parking standards and loading standards. This application meets those requirements as found by the Bowie Advisory Planning Board. We also pointed out in our staff report that there have been multiple other projects in the city which the council has approved a reduction in the number of required spaces. Also that the county zoning ordinance has been in rewrite. It's about to come out. The county has actually shifted and went with lower parking generation rates for projects such as this. So for all of those reasons, we recommended, and the Bowie Advisory Planning Board agreed that the departure should be granted.
So it seems to me a little odd. So the county has a requirement for 738 spots. And then we find ourselves in a position where we have a new construction site, which is tons and tons of space available there. Everything is within the control of the developer in terms of how much parking space they put in. It's not a situation where they're dealing with a limited envelope. It's entirely green field. What was the reasoning for being willing to take down 250 something parking spaces?
Well, it's basically the industry standard is what's happening. The sites have been overparked. There's a lot of unused asphalt in these developments, and consequently, the county has agreed to change the zoning ordinance to provide for less parking in these developments. And it really is responding to the market, responding to the types of projects that are built and the evidence that exists out there, so that it would not be wise to continue with extra paving, extra stormwater management requirements, extra runoff associated with large parking lots. And I think that's just been the movement over the years to revise the county's regulations, and we've approved multiple instances of piecemeal applications following that same logic. And so this is just another case like that. And I can't really provide much more of an explanation. Again, I said Mr. Horn, the attorney representative for the developers here, they prepared a statement of justification which covers some of the things that I've talked about. And perhaps if you wanted to ask Mr. Horn for additional details, he could provide some answers to your questions.
That would be great. Mr. Hort?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. For the record, Arthur Horn, the law office of Shipley & Horn in Largo, Maryland, here on behalf of the applicant. And I want to thank Mr. Myhart because I concur with everything he's saying. Yes, Councilman Wolverine, this is a project that is developing from the beginning. This is being developed in the as an EIA zone, which means that the development is planned. It's set forth with an idea of the number of parking spaces that are required for development. It not only, what we have here is a situation where we're parking 1.8 spaces per unit. There's 350 units, 1.8 parking spaces. Again, with this reduction in impervious surfaces, we're actually creating more green space, more environmentally friendly development. You have a situation where this ratio is the same ratio that multifamilies is being developed, not only in the city of Bowie, not only in Prince George's County, but the entire Washington region. And when you look at parking ratios by the code that sets it up, or the recommendations, they recommend even less. So this parking that we're proposing, and by the way, the site plan that laid out the development that showed the parking has already been approved by this same city council. You guys voted to support it, with the layout of the building and the parking associated with it. And so it is just part of the overall South Lake development as a whole that will adequately serve this wholly enclosed multifamily unit, and will be part of an overall development that's beneficial to the city and to the county as a whole. So what we're asking for is, as Mr. Meinhardt indicated, is something that is consistent throughout the entire Washington region. We're not asking for anything that's unusual. And again, the numbers that you see are just numbers that suggest that when you have X amount of units, you need X amount of parking, but that's not accurate as far as an overall development is concerned. And so requests for departure in that is not unusual. And in this particular case, as I say, you have seen it, the development as we've laid it out. It's a beautiful development. You won't have any problems with parking. And again, it's consistent with all the other, I think we list 3 different apartment multifamily buildings in the city of Bowie that is consistent with this development. So, I really appreciate the Bowie City Planning Advisory Committee looking at this in detail and agreeing with us. The Bowie City Council here approving the detailed site plan, and we ask that you concur with what took place with the Bowie Advisory Planning Board, which, by the way, there was no opposition, number one. Nobody called it up in 15 days. and on the appeal period, and this city council, who has a right to call up, didn't call it up. So we are surprised to be in this situation, but grateful for your approval of this recommendation.
A couple of follow-up questions for you, if I may.
Mr. Mayor.
Quick.
I think Councilmember Wolfe had a follow-up question, and then we'll move to you, Mr. Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So quick question, Mr. Horn, or a couple of quick questions. Some of it's commentary, but the first thing is the reduced number reflects a 1.8 per unit, is that correct?
That's correct.
So, and how many units are there? 350 something?
I'm sorry, it's 325.
325? All right. And are they one-bedroom units or two or what?
It's a combination, primarily one, but some two.
So do you know what the numbers are on that?
I do not have it right here in front of me. I'm going to ask Mr. Meinhardt, do you have that in there in front of you?
Are there any three-bedroom units in there?
I do believe there's a few.
The information was in the staff report, but it's not in the resolution, not in the planning board's resolution. I'm looking at that now.
Okay.
And one moment, I want to see if we can get that. Yeah, I'd like to hear what that number is. Here's while we're waiting for those numbers, the concern I have is that you're putting in 1.8 parking spaces for apartments that have multiple bedrooms and therefore going to have multiple residents, and including 3 and 2 bedroom units, which means you're going to have for sure multiple vehicles per unit, which means you're going to have more vehicles than you are parking spaces, which means people are going to migrate their parking to other locations, which is not favorable for either the future residents who live there, nor is it beneficial for the community as a whole. If you start having people clogging up streets with parking or parking over in retail space area, they just become a magnet for break-ins. Do we have the total number of rooms and units?
If you don't mind, Councilman, while they're looking that up, can we go to Councilman Henry Gardner?
Of course. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for staff. Joe Minor. Joe, the parking ordinance that Mr. Horn was referencing, that has come from Prince George's County. At what point in time was that changed or modified to where we are now, where they're able to make such a change to the parking requirements?
A council member, the zoning ordinance rewrite is what I was referring to, and that rewrite was approved by the county council, but it's not effective yet until the county-wide map amendment gets approved, and that will probably occur later this year. And so in the meantime, what people are doing is coming in piecemeal fashion, one project at a time, and asking for relief through the departure process, which is an existing process in the zoning ordinance and has been used over and over for this type of waiver. And it's been justified primarily, as we've said, because basically the industry, the region, all of the other examples that are out there are showing a lower parking generation rate. And so until the ordinance actually becomes effective and everyone will be allowed to do it, this is the only way that someone can go ahead with a project and provide fewer spaces than the code currently requires.
Mr. Mayor, I do have the answer.
Congressman, I've been listening to me. Henry Gardner, any councilman, any other questions?
Yeah, my next question is for Mr. Horn, but I'm going to allow him first to answer, provide an answer to Councilmember Wolfing.
Yeah, thank you. The number of one bedrooms, 170. The number of two bedrooms are 135, and the number of three bedrooms are 20. And what you have to understand is that the 1.8 park is a average of all efficiency 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. And just because you have a 3-bedroom does not mean you have additional cars. You know, you have parents with kids who have a bed, and they don't have additional cars and stuff like that. So that you can't use that raw number and do a correlation. Again, the 1.8 units per unit is a amalgamation of all the different type of units they have, and it is standard, like I say, in the industry.
Okay. Councilman Gardner, anything else at this time?
Yes. Okay. My question is for the applicant. So with this reduction of cars, parking spaces that you're pursuing, what do you plan to do with that additional space? We're talking about a sizable lot remaining. Do you plan to put later come back, because you know this project is going to be going on for some time? Do you plan to come back and ask for additional housing? What do you plan to do with this extra land?
Well, Ms. Gardner, as you know, this project, we've been going through this for years. There's nothing to come back to. You've already approved, this council and the parking plan already approved the number of residential, single family, attached and detached. The commercial is coming next for the approval, and the multifamily is the last part of the development. It was all developed as a whole, and the space that's left over is trails, parks. They've got, you know, with 2 water features that's on the site. So there's a lot of green space and stuff that's included because of the reduction of impervious surfaces. So again, when you look at the overall detailed site plan, you can see that these last 325 units, that's it on the site. And everything else has been designed to work in unison with each other.
If I may at this time, Councilmember Gardner.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Yes,
May I go?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I have to say now, I understand the position of Councilmember Gardner as well as Councilmember Wolfie. I understand what they're saying, but my concern goes a different way. Number one, I understand from what we're hearing that this is the trend and what's going on, and this is basically how developments are being done, the number of parking lots. My other concern is when we put many additional parking spaces, what I've seen happen is you enhance and increase the propensity for vagrancy and loitering. You have people who end up parking there who don't belong there, or leaving vehicles for prolonged times and other things. So I am not one who, though I agree with, we need to make sure that everybody has a chance to park and that there's additional parking. I don't want to see us creating an environment where we create problems for the city with vagrants and people and others parking there or staying there overnight or leaving vehicles there over time or inviting people to park their cars till they get fixed there and those kind of things as well, which we know happens when we have large parking lots that aren't fully utilized. So that's my concern with it from that standpoint. Any other concerns from any other council members?
Yes, I'd like to follow up on my on the question the answer that Mr.
Right,
yeah, thank you. So if I'm correct, you're suggesting that you've got 170 of the 135 of the 2-bedroom and 20 of the 3 that gets me a total of about 500 quote rooms. You made the argument that some of those extra rooms won't be accommodated by people who drive, and I would argue that there's a fair number of those one-room apartments that will be inhabited by two people who will share the room and still have two vehicles. One of the things I want to point out, and part of the concern I have, is that you're looking at a total of 500 bedrooms and coming up with a total of only 587 parking spaces. And while I recognize that you mentioned the whole region and whatnot, this isn't the whole region. This is a suburban area. This is an area that is not served by mass transit. There is no subway for people to run down and grab. There is no major mass transit there. So the residents of these apartments are going to be required to have a vehicle in order to get anywhere. And so you really need to understand that it's going to be a one-to-one, and while other areas of the region are not going to be that way. You mentioned that this is nothing unusual. I take exception to that. Anytime you're going through a process that is by definition unusual because it's asking for a waiver or a departure, that in and of itself makes it unusual. So I don't think we should characterize this as unusual. And the discussion earlier about this being an approved layout, the layout may have been laid out, but it didn't indicate that we were short by 250 units. Ultimately, I think this is a bad thing for our future residents, and we're going to find ourselves with people parking on our streets and in a position where we don't have residents with an adequate place to. I'm almost finished, Mr. Mayor, and we won't have place for the. And that's because I'm not finished, and there won't be a place for people, adequate parking place. And I also note that this would mean that you would actually reduce the number of handicap parking spaces as well, because my understanding is that that would be a percentage of the total parking spaces that would be handicapped, and that total parking quantity goes down. That means there'd be fewer handicap parking spaces as well, and I don't think that serves the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to briefly comment on what Councilmember Wolfley mentioned, and I certainly understand his point. And but I just want to say that I live in Heather Ridge, and I believe the same thing happened in that community. And I've lived there since 2015. I haven't had any issues with parking, and we have similar arrangements there. We have 1 bedrooms, we have 1 bedroom in a den, 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and it's a large community. And I haven't heard any issues from any residents regarding parking. We do have 2 handicap spaces near each front of each of the larger apartment buildings, but all the spaces that are near there are front parking spaces. So like I said, I haven't heard any issues. We have many apartments there, so just wanted to bring that to your attention. And they're very wide spaces. But I believe Mr. Minor let me know if I'm saying that similar situation happened to Heather Ridge.
That's correct, ma'am. It was parking ratio 1.83, so it's very similar to what's being requested here.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Gardner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I wanted to first state what Councilmember Harrison stated is correct regarding Heather Hills. However, the apartments over on Governor's Bridge Road, where Carrabba's is located, those residents park along Governor's Bridge Road across from the car dealerships because those apartments have overflown when it comes to parking, as well as residents over at the Bowen. They park along Health Center Drive because of overflowing. And what Councilmember Wolfley is speaking of may not happen at all apartment communities, but it is at the two of our newest communities where I believe, if I'm not correct, I like to maybe go and research where previous councils had supported the reduction of parking spaces, and which has resulted what we have currently, the cars that are parking on the main highway. And Health Center Drive, where that is a problem, is because it's right along there where we have hospitals and senior communities that need access to those roads. And we have cars that are parked on that main road there. And then we have residents that are parked along Governor's Bridge Road for the apartments that are, again, behind Carrabba's. So I totally understand and agree with Councilmember Wolfrey. This is not a good decision for future residents that will reside in those apartments or in those multi-family dwellings. Now, also, my other concern is that, and I've shared this with you, Mr. Mayor, is that I just oftentimes, I understand staff has said this is a trend, and just because it's a trend doesn't mean that it's a good thing. And what we have going on now is that lawmakers have decided to rule on the side of the developers and having them make decisions on how our residents are going to live. Now, this is totally going to be an inconvenience to where you have residents, as Councilmember Wolfley stated, that do not rely on public transportation. They're going to rely on vehicles. So homes are going to have a husband and a wife. They're each going to have their own vehicles. That could be a one-bedroom, a couple. And then if they're having roommates, if there's a two-bedroom, that's 3 cars possibly per apartment. And they're going to be parking situations over there. So I really understand exactly what Councilmember Wolfrey is saying. And overall, it just cheapens or it ruins the integrity of the project. And every time this developer comes in front of council, there is a reduction of quality in some form or fashion. And I said this to them. I'm saying this publicly. This is just my concern. And this is why I will strongly support not doing this. We can't do this. We cannot support the reduction of parking spaces. And we should talk to our lawmakers on the county level and letting them know that just because this is a trend, it's not a good thing. This is not a good thing. But thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. And Councilmember, again, I appreciate your position. I appreciate that of Councilmember Wolfley. I do take exception to saying that we just simply do whatever developers say when they come in front of us. We've gone through our planning process. We've gone through our staff. We've looked at that. We've done it. I also hope that we're getting to a point that this development will create jobs right there with the new businesses coming in, that people will be able to work and play and have, look at that even as part of the workforce housing, that they'll be able to have jobs right there where they won't have to commute and go other places. So having said that, and again, my feeling about the vagrancy and having these large parking lots with all these empty spaces and potentially, as well as someone who approves of the green space, if we can keep more green space, I like that as well. So having that said,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can I just quickly chime in?
Yes, please. Go right ahead, Councilwoman.
I just want to say I appreciate the concerns and points that Councilmember Wolfley brought up, as well as Councilmember Gardner. There are just a couple of things that I want to just say really quickly, since this isn't my district. I want to just reject the notion that we do whatever developers say. I just want to echo that again, because I don't think that that's been the patterns that have been displayed by this particular city council, because we have not approved every development that has come before us. We actually have not done that. So I just want to echo that for all the residents that are watching, because I don't want this narrative to get out there that we are on the side of developers, because I don't think that's the case for any of us. I think that this issue in itself is a little bit complex and a little bit nuanced, because you have two sides of a coin where you're looking, a lot of the points while they are valid thoughts and while they are coming from genuine places, they are based on speculation, in my opinion, based off of, making the assumption that if somebody has a 2-bedroom versus a 3-bedroom, that they're going to have multiple cars. I'm pretty sure we all know the way apartment complexes work. They usually don't allow multiple cars. So I don't think that's the pattern that has gone across the United States, that when people go into these multifamily housing areas, that they bring multiple cars with them, because that's just never been the trend, and it still isn't the trend till today. So while I hear that and I understand that a lot of people feel like this is Bowie, but I want to go a little bit on the angle of what Councilwoman Harrison brought up earlier, and giving a clear example that has not been the experience in the community that she spent the most time in. And so I want to caution us by bringing up a lot of speculation while they are valid thoughts and they're coming from a good place. Unless there are hardcore data and there's hardcore facts to back up these accusations or these statements, I personally think that we've gone through all of the processes. I remind you, and let's take this down memory lane, this wasn't a development that this particular city council had a ton of say on because of the history of this project and some of the agreements that were signed previously. So our hands were kind of tied from the very beginning. So this isn't something that we walked into happy-go-lucky, really super excited for the development in itself. But now that we do have this development and we are handed, I agree with your points, Councilmember Gardner, that yes, we do want to work with some of our county lawmakers and think about the way that they institute certain laws for our development processes and practices. I think that's a challenge that we've all made very clear from the beginning that we wanted to go after, and that we are trying diligently, is my hope, that we are all working hard to work with them to revitalize a lot of these poor laws that we are stuck with having to abide by. Now, because this has been gone through our planning development, we've heard from city staff who clearly doesn't have much of an objection about this. And I understand both points in terms of, more space brings more people, more loitering, more cars, more people who actually don't belong in the neighborhood. But I think one thing you can look at is if you look at the trends in terms of the people that are moving into Prince George's County, or the people that are becoming attracted to Prince George's County, that are either being pushed out of DC or other areas, or the people that are just coming because they're attracted to Prince George's County, I do think that increasing the size of the parking spaces, I do think that does pose a potential risk when we already have other things that we are trying to solve for currently, with safety and things of that sort that a lot of residents have brought up over the last couple of months. So that is something that I want us to be mindful, and I want all of the residents who are watching and thinking through to be mindful as we go down this journey of this topic. But I just like to reject the notion that we do whatever developers want, because that has not been the trajectory of our actions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. At this point, I'd like to call for the vote. Any unreadiness? Hearing none. All in favor of passing the resolution, respond with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same favor.
Nay.
Nay.
Okay. City Clerk, the vote.
I heard 4-2. Councilmember Harrison, I don't think I heard your vote.
I'm so sorry. I'm gonna vote yes. Aye.
Okay, so Mayor, we have 5-2.
All right.
Thank you very
Motion
much.
carries. Hey, thank you, everyone, for your input. We are now at item D, KFC at Karington Plaza. I'll turn that over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, good evening, council members. I'm Joe Minor, the planning director. Item D on your agenda is a returning item which council had taken up at the April 19th meeting. This is involving conversion of vacant bank building at Karington Plaza to a KFC restaurant, and council reviewed the plan on April 19th. You had identified several concerns which you conveyed to the applicant at that time. The applicant has provided us with a revised site plan addressing those issues. They are here this evening to present those changes and discuss their application with council and seek your approval. Again, I remind you that the city does have final say on this in terms of site plan approval because of an agreement that you have when the property was annexed. So the city has to concur with whatever changes proposed in order for the applicant to move ahead and get building permits. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to the engineer representing the property developer, and that's Mr. Jeffrey Sinero.
Thank you very much, and thank you for everybody to review this case. I'm having a little bit of trouble with sharing. Would anybody happen to have the plan to pull up? I'm having trouble being able to pull it up on the screen.
I do have the PowerPoint. I can bring that up in 1 second.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Can you see this?
Yes, sir. We would probably just need to really go to the second slide out of that one, I think. Yes. No, the one prior, please. Actually, the other one, something's not showing up on that one. If you could pull it back to I think what would be the second picture. That one would be perfect. That one right there, yes, sir.
Oh. Okay.
So what we had done, and we originally presented this for comment to everyone here, was to basically keep the drive-through originally the way it was, the way it functioned since that building was there, from what we understood. And what the comments came back were very valid in the idea that there was between the roadway in which you access this shopping center to the exit of this drive-through where you see the three arrows coming around now, that there was not enough sight distance. In trying to work with the owner of the shopping center, we had to kind of stay within our general footprint, and what we did to try to alleviate that issue the best possible way was to, when people leave this drive-through, which the three arrows kind of indicate, to create an island, which per staff's request would be a green island, to pull the traffic away from that public roadway and intersection so that they have more time and a better sight distance to be able to see traffic coming in. Along with that, a stop sign, stop bar, and also you'll see there as well a crosswalk with a accessible ramp to allow pedestrians that may be coming in and out of the KFC access across in a more safe manner. There is already a crosswalk in the rear that actually accesses to the accessible spaces in the back, and then also to the shopping center as a whole. So that was the solution we came up with that allowed for, again, better sight distance and a safer situation than it actually exists there now, with being able to have stopping as they come out of the drive-through.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to open for any questions that anyone may have at this time.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go right ahead, Councilmember.
Thank you. First of all, I want to extend my appreciation to the applicant. When you were here last time, I had raised the concerns about line of sight and safety, and I recognize that there are always limitations as to what you can do, but I appreciate what you have done here, which is, I think, made a significant improvement for our pedestrians as well as for the motorists, and avoid at least help mitigate some of the risk that's associated with incoming traffic there. So I just want to say thank you. I know it's not ideal, but I do believe it's improved, and it will allow you to make use of the existing facility. So thank you very much. Job well done. I appreciate it.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Council.
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Waffle was.
Go ahead.
Well, I too. I want to
recognize Councilmember Gardner at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thank you. I too want to.
We can't hear you, Councilman.
Okay, sorry about that. I too want to thank the applicant, and it's always my desire to see our commercial retail spaces full, and it's always good to see them turn pretty quickly. And in this case, we just recently lost the Capital One Bank there, and now we have another tenant coming in. I'm very pleased to see them coming in. I think your improvements are incredible, and welcome to Bowie.
We lost you again, Councilman.
Oh, and I said, and welcome to Bowie.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All righty. I will now go to the Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Well, let me start by saying that I'm really appreciative, right? We don't see a lot of folks come in and make recommendations like this when they're acquiring some property from us. So I'm very appreciative of that. As I said, when this first came up, my biggest issue with this is that our council has recently passed a plan that will enact a strategic economic development plan. What we've heard for many, many years, and what we've heard as a new council, is that folks in our community are really looking for a different feel in terms of the businesses that are coming to Bowie. And while now I'm appreciative of your interest and understand the interest of coming to Bowie, into the city, especially for the folks in District 3 and from what I've been hearing, I can't support this project. But again, very appreciative that you guys have taken the step to make some very significant safety changes.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any other comments from any of the council members? Okay, I guess I will say, I would echo what my fellow council members said. Thank you for coming back, making the revisions, making sure it's safe. Again, I too am very happy to see that the resources that are available, the commercial spaces, that we put them to use. I know Council Member Waffle, i.e. the Mayor Pro Tem, has a strong feeling about economic development, and also the quality and types of food that we have, avoiding fast food, just being very candid. But I think it's a good opportunity for us to not only utilize that space, but remember, it creates jobs. And that's a part of what we need to do for our community as well. So having said that, I would entertain a motion to approve at this time.
Councilmember Waffle, it's your district.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the detailed site plan for KFC at Karington Plaza.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second.
Mr. Mayor, I request a roll call vote.
Okay. It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. I will go first. Madam City Clerk. I vote
Mayor
aye.
Adam.
I vote aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Waffle.
Nay.
Councilmember Gardner.
Yes.
Councilmember Harrison,
I vote aye.
Councilmember Esteve,
Aye.
Councilmember Wolfley,
Aye.
Councilmember Ndebumalo.
Nay.
Okay, I've got 5-2, Mayor.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joe. Okay, next up, we'd like to move the item that we moved from the consent agenda to at this point. Hearing none, we will just move on at this moment and go to the legislative session wrap up with our representative from Venable.
That's okay. We don't need.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm here with my team, Marta Harding, John Steerhoff, and Brian Quinn. As we all witnessed and were sitting on the sidelines, this was a session like no other, including leadership changes in the Senate. But we all made it through. Matching up the agreed upon priorities that we discussed in December of last year, let me run through those. The first of which was additional speed cameras. So HR 619 by Delegate Harrison expands the use of speed cameras in Prince George's County in areas where the maximum speed limit is 35 miles an hour, and it was patterned after similar legislation in Montgomery County. One of the other items on our priority list was zoning authority. I think as you've seen, House Bill 980 was passed, which allows Prince George's County to modernize its 50-year-old zoning ordinance. We also had discussions about the aging water system, and we arranged a meeting between staff and MES to talk about options for additional funding of the improvements. Excuse my animals in the background. There was no additional funding provided to the racetrack, and we have, excuse me a second, we have asked for a meeting as suggested by Senator Peters with state DOT and city officials to talk about improvements to 197 and 450. And then also as it relates to funding that came to Bowie through the capital program, Old Town Bowie received $300,000 for historic properties. I believe Councilman Esteve had worked on that. The Bowie Lions Club received $10,000. The Bowie Bay Sox received $500,000. And then last but not least, on the priorities for the city, there were no change to the highway user fees. There was one item that I wanted to ask if Marta would speak to. Sent an email out last week, or maybe it was early this week, about House Bill 581 on employment standards during an emergency. I don't know if everyone has an opportunity to look at that, but I asked Marta if she could add any commentary to what we sent out.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Greg sent around a summary of the bill. In short, it is an emergency bill that establishes safety protections and benefits for essential workers that are triggered whenever the governor proclaims a catastrophic health emergency due to a communicable disease. The bill does apply to essential employers, which includes a unit of state or local government. And to briefly summarize what the bill requires, that the employer is, and I should also say, it applies to an employee a worker who cannot perform his or her function remotely. It requires employers to comply with existing federal and state safety standards, requires the employer to provide safety equipment subject to availability, requires the employer to take proactive steps to minimize the risk of transmission of the communicable disease and pay for the cost of testing if the worker doesn't have access to a free test or if insurance or other benefits don't pay. It also requires funding for leave, public health emergency leave, but only if the federal or state government provides funding for that. I'll just say the bill was substantially narrowed from its original form. As it was introduced, it was so broad it literally could have been triggered if there was a declared state of emergency for a snowstorm or a hurricane. So they substantially narrowed the bill to only communicable public health emergency disease emergencies due to communicable diseases. There were other requirements like bereavement leave and a variety of other things that were removed from the bill in the end, and it passed in the form that I just described. The sponsor of the bill in the House was Delegate Derek Davis, and Senator Malcolm Augustine sponsored the bill in the Senate.
So that concludes the report.
Okay, any questions from our council at this time?
Yes, I do have a question.
Councilmember Harrison?
Yes, thank you. We've retained your services to garner earmarks for our aging water system, and I wanted to find out what the status was on that.
The status on that is we presented our request to both Congressman Hoyer, Senator Cardin, and Senator Van Hollen. Congressman Hoyer, excuse me. Congressman Hoyer has submitted our request for $2 million to the House Appropriations Committee, which I think is a significant move forward. And we're waiting to see this week which of the two senators or whether both of the senators will submit our request to the committees. On the Senate side, they're moving a little slower, so their requests are due this week. But with I feel very good about Mr. Hoyer's request given his status.
That's good news. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Venable at this time?
Yes, can you provide either a quick synopsis for me here, or if you could send me a summary, offline about the additional latitudes that we get on the speed cameras?
Yeah, I can do that. And why don't I just send you the full bill and an explanation of that so you have it. And I can also send, if council would like to see it, there's a 90-day report that's put together by Maryland Legislative Reference Service of all the legislation that passed. It goes into a lot of detail. You might have to put some more paper in your printer before you print it out, but it's huge. But Councilman, I will send you details when 619 is tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Venable at this time? If not, thank you so very much, and thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, should I send the 90-day report? It's kind of long.
Yes, please, just send it.
Okay, we'll do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this time now, we will move on about SB 508, HB 584, and we will have Mr. Eddie Pounds from Thonkin Bolton.
Thank you, Mr. E. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and esteemed members of this great city council. Good to see you this evening. For the record, my name is Eddie Pounds with the law firm Thonkin Bolton, and it is my absolute honor and pleasure to be before you again this evening. My report is only on one bill, two companion bills, but it's a very important bill that was signed into law by Governor Hogan. Those bills, identified as House Bill 584 and Senate Bill 508, known as the Net Energy Metering Bills, sponsored by two of our champions from the 23rd, Delegate Ron Watson and Senator Doug Peters, who both did a yeoman's job in getting those bills across the finish line So I would like to publicly thank each of them for their leadership. My team and I, which includes Matt Celentano, they're all on tonight, but maybe not on video, but Matt Celentano, Neil Karkanis, and Philemon Kinzerski made sure we worked closely with each sponsor, as well as Assistant City Manager Daniel Mears and City Attorney Alyssa Levan to ensure the bill stayed on a path towards passage. Now, House Bill 584 and Senate Bill 508 had a companion bill which complemented your bill because it increased the statewide net metering capacity limit of 1,500 megawatts to 3,000 megawatts. Your bill, in its most simplistic form, increased the 2 megawatt generating capacity limit to no more than 5 megawatts. So just for educational purposes, net metering is a billing mechanism that credits solar energy system owners for the electricity they add to the grid. For example, if a residential customer has a photovoltaic system on their roof, it may generate more electricity than the home actually uses during daylight hours. If the home is net metered, the electricity meter will run backwards to provide a credit against what electricity is consumed at night or during other periods when the home's electricity use exceeds the system's output. Net metering allows customer generators, both residential and commercial, to export energy to the electric grid, which in essence allows the customer to get credit for their future electric bills. Now back to your bills, no pun intended. I don't want to undersell the importance of this legislation because it was very important. And without its passage, the power purchase agreement the city entered into with Tesla concerning the photovoltaic solar systems that were to be installed on the southern portion of the Encian property would have been considered suspended, thus terminating Tesla's obligation to install the solar system on that portion of the land. But the bill passed, and construction of the southern solar array will proceed, allowing the city to remove 2/3 of its energy consumption from the grid, representing a considerable cost savings. So just the impetus about why this bill came about, a little bit more on that, was related to a decision by the PSC, the Public Service Commission, to prohibit construction of a solar array in a case involving Washington College's construction of 3 solar arrays that, when combined, would have exceeded the 2 megawatt net metering limit. Right. And because of that, there was concern that ambiguity in the law would have impacted the city's project on the Encian property. But this bill removed that ambiguity in the law, and the solar array construction will continue without the fear of a case having to go before the PSC on this matter. And with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report. I do just want to emphasize again that it was an absolute pleasure to represent the city in Annapolis before the General Assembly. And with that, I will pause for any questions.
I think at this point, I would like to say thank you on behalf of the council. Good job in getting that done. I do appreciate it. And with that, any other council members have any questions or comments?
Yes, I just want to also reiterate, Mr. Mayor, and thank Funk and Bolton, and of course our senator and delegate for bringing back a win for the city and making a real impact on what we were looking to do as far as our goals. So thank you so much, Eddie. We appreciate you.
Very, very welcome. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Any other comments from any of the other council members?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to reiterate Councilmember Harrison's comments just now, in particular to our elected officials in the 23rd District, that energy metering bill was priority number 1 for a major project that we've been working on now for a very long time. Okay. In fact, they were able to deliver that within 1 year of our asking is, I think, indicative of their hard work and ability. So I just wanted to say a public thank you to them.
All righty.
Mr. Mayor?
Again, thank you so very much. And if they're listening now to Senator and our delegate. I'm sorry, Councilman Wolfie, I didn't know you were trying to reach in. Thank you. Go ahead, Councilman.
That's quite all right. We'll all be together here soon. It'll be a lot easier then. I do want to reiterate the appreciation, gratitude my colleagues have expressed, but I do want to also emphasize the significance we originally anticipated, and Mr. Estev mentioned this as well. We had originally anticipated this would be a multi-year effort to get this hurdle cleared. So thank you very much for bringing it home sooner rather than later. It'll allow us to proceed with a significant solar project, and I think that's going to be great for the city. So thank you. And again, also thank you to all of our elected officials that worked in concert with you to make that happen. It was commendable collaboration for all. So good job, and thanks for everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, thank you again.
And Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Gardner, go right ahead.
Yes, and I too would like to extend my gratitude to all the full team that includes Mr. Pound and the firm as well, and our state delegation. Just want to again thank, as my colleagues have done this evening, I too want to show my gratitude. Thank you all. All right.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments at this time?
Mr. Mayor, just going to echo everything they said.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ndubamadu. All right. Hearing no other comments at this time, again, thank you, Mr. Pounds, and you can enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Mayor, I'm in Ocean City right now. I will not stand up because I have on the top. I'll get back to. We'll have a great night.
For the loud laugh. Have a good evening, Mr. Pounds.
You too.
Good. All right. At this time,
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Mr.
Mr.
Gill.
Gregg. Yes, sir. I just want to add something to the question that Councilwoman Harrison asked. In addition to the earmark, we are pursuing on behalf of the city of Bowie, there's going to be additional water infrastructure bills that are going to be passed this year, we think, and we're pursuing opportunities to both tap into those resources as well.
All right. Thank you so much for that.
Okay.
That's really great.
That'd be great.
You too.
Thank you so much.
Great.
I will say good night.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you again, Mr. Gill.
Thanks so much. Have a great night.
All right. Having said that, we will now move on to the discussion of a possible Saturday council meeting. As you know, this is something that I'd like to just pose to council, and I think it's something we really should strongly consider, and I'd like to see us do. And what I'm asking is that twice a year, one in maybe the fall and one in the spring, that we conduct a council meeting on a Saturday. The reason for that being those who work those mid shifts from 3 to 11 and other things that typically don't have an opportunity to participate in the meetings, but also our seniors who sometimes it runs a little later than they are, and we don't want them out driving and doing things. It would provide them an opportunity to make sure that they know that their voices are heard as well in the meetings, particularly as we will start coming back and having line. So I'd really like to hear from council. I really think if we do 2 meetings a year, it would give our seniors and others an opportunity to participate. We will not be making that an additional meeting, but just one of our regular meetings for the month. And I think, if you don't mind me mentioning it, Councilman Staff made a good point about making sure that a lot of the things that we have on that agenda are things that may require input and thought from our community as well. And so looking at the agendas and trying to set them up that way, that we'd be able to have an opportunity for people to voice their opinion. I have those things that we talk about and generally get some feedback. Councilman Staff, I hope you didn't mind me sharing that, and I hope that kind of sums it up pretty good.
Yes. So one thing that a member of staff raised since our discussion, which I think is something we ought to consider, is that there are many people in our community who recognize the Sabbath on Saturday. For that reason, my suggestion is more that we not necessarily do a whole formal council meeting on Saturday, partly out of respect for our stakeholders and staff and the other folks who tend to be included in that process's time. But we could use a quarterly Saturday in the spirit of what you're proposing, more to have an open forum for residents to bring issues to our attention. We wouldn't necessarily take action on those on a Saturday, but there are many other towns that have sort of an office hours equivalent, or basically an open hearing equivalent that's advertised in advance. And I think that could conceivably help us achieve our goal of giving residents sort of an extra opportunity to speak to us at a time that may be more convenient to them, without having to worry about the challenges of Saturday Sabbath, or just the general concerns about work-life balance for those who tend to be involved in our formal business. But that's just something for consideration.
And that's a good point. I think, though, and this is, again, just mine, and I'm by no means going against anybody's Sabbath. I'm thinking if we can schedule a meeting once every 6 months or so, that may not be as interfering with their Sabbath as much, of making a change and doing that in trading off having our seniors have an opportunity. Again, your point about that is a very good one. And I'd like to hear what some of the other council members think about that. Councilmember Harrison?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I certainly appreciate the suggestions, although I'm not in favor of hosting Saturday meetings. But I would like to, get some time to hear from our constituents, because I want to do certainly what's in the best interest of them. But I want to hear from them, because I have not heard this from anyone. And as an at-large member, I talked to many constituents, and they've never suggested us moving our meetings or holding a meeting on Saturday. So I definitely wouldn't want this to move forward until we got some letters or something, host something where people actually want this to happen. And I get some good metrics on maybe, I'd be able to say yay or nay if this is something the constituents would really want. And also I want to hear from city staff, how would that impact staff? Because, I know they also work very hard during the week, and this is, kind of like their normal job from 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday, and then we're asking them to come in on a Saturday. Whereas I know we also have jobs, but this is a part-time job for us as far as council's concerned. So to me, having them come in on a Saturday is just could be an imposition to them. But like I said, I want to do what's in the best interest, but I want to hear from staff, and also want to get more feedback from our constituents on this.
Hey, I'm understanding that. Just so you'll know, I brought it up because I have had constituents reaching out saying that it gets late in the evening, they'd like to participate more, that why don't we have it so that maybe a Saturday. So that was brought to my attention. And again, remember, we're talking about once or twice for the entire year. That's all. But I think it is proper for us to take into consideration how it impacts staff or how they feel about that, as well as, I think, hear back from our constituents and see. So those are both very valid points. Anyone else like to care to share at this time?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to just come straight out and say it. I'm not at all supportive of it, and I'm going to tell you why. Since I just come straight out and say it, and I understand, Councilmember Staff, I understand and I understand your direction and where it's coming from. However, if nothing more, this pandemic has shown me is quality of life and quality of time, and spending as much time with your family, friends, and loved ones, or even alone, and asking city staff and those who support council meetings, to the production team, the sound guy, Mark. I mean, asking him to come out on a Saturday, time that he or staff could spend with their families. I'm speaking from someone who personally lost 6 people from this pandemic, and I would very much love to spend much more time with them, and taking any additional time, adding it to a schedule for staff or myself or any of you or any residents that may otherwise not have to utilize that time to coming out and speaking in front of a hearing that could actually wait until a Monday night. It's just a bit much to ask, I think, to ask of residents and city staff. I understand, Michael, where your council member staff, where you're coming from with this. I just can't support it. And I'm just going to come straight out and say it. Just going to say I can't support it. And, you know, if the council moves to doing so, you know, I'm hopeful that you will think about the lives that it will affect. This city has gone on for 100 years and it's run very finely without Saturday meetings a part of its schedule. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilman Gardner. I think what we do have is an aging population as well, but your concerns and your thoughts are taken, and I appreciate that. Anybody else, any other comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go right ahead, Council Member.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Just a couple of comments. The first issue I had was the one that was previously mentioned, which is the concern about interference with the Sabbath. And I would, the issue, of course, is that maybe just once or twice a year, but if the business is associated with you or your business or your interest, then it becomes relevant, and it doesn't matter if it's just once or twice a year. It happens to coincide, and you're out of luck. And we've kind of put that obstacle in front of somebody, and I think that we shouldn't be in a position to do that. Secondly, I comment that ultimately there's a difference. I mean, you can say it's 2 hours on Saturday or 2 hours on Monday night. It's Mox Nix, except that if it's Saturday, then you've ruined my weekend. If you're somebody that has travel plans, people tend to head out of town on a Friday to go off to wherever, whether it's just for a long weekend or a short weekend even, or the beginning of a vacation, and asking staff or you know, stakeholders to really kind of take a day that is usually known to be free of any obligations, and all of a sudden encumber it with the possibility of having to make an appearance. I think that's a little problematic. So again, Monday evening, come in, you know, if I got to come in on a weeknight, it's not that burdensome for me. But if I got to come in on a weekend, then as a stakeholder or whomever, I think it puts a bigger burden on the participants, the population as a whole, and any stakeholders we might have. And then finally, on the seniors aspect of it, I've not heard any complaints so far from seniors. I know plenty who are way up past the time I hit the sack, but you know, I do know that we have ability to, you know, take people's public input beforehand if they're not able to make it. We do have live streaming of the meetings, which allows people to watch, and I certainly get feedback up here in terms of text messages and the like, so I know there's always something going on, and I do believe that there's plenty of opportunity here. That having been said, I certainly am always interested in opportunity to hear from constituents. I personally don't have an objection to scheduling a couple of weekend sessions here and again to get feedback from folks, and you know, I'd certainly be amenable to doing something along those lines. I just don't think we'd be in a position to make it an official business meeting. Thank you.
If you could, Councilman, and help me here. I'm just trying to figure out the difference between having people come out, because we'd still have staff for a listening session, as opposed to conducting any business.
Sure. I would say that is, yeah, I would say the difference would be if it's conducting official business, you have to have the entire support infrastructure in place, including our legal team. You'd also have to have the clerk has to be there, and you have to have city manager and the like. So it really presents a full-on exposure on the staff side. From a stakeholder standpoint, if somebody has to come in, say from, say the lobbyists, for example, that were here, I think that's an example of kind of the extended effort that you need to put in. When it comes to doing something that's just getting feedback, we still have to have people here to manage the meeting in terms of infrastructure, but it's fewer people, and that's the sort of thing that can be arranged for folks. So I think so. It's a matter of scope more than anything else.
Okay, so you're telling about the number of people and resources. Okay. All right. Any other comments at this time?
I'll just echo the comments Councilmember Wolfley made. I love the idea of a quarterly or every 6 month, probably quarterly, Saturday. I just think that doing a full business agenda meeting will probably present certain challenges. I especially am thinking of a lot of our residents who do recognize that Saturday Sabbath, there will be a lot of legitimate consternation there. And I know some city personnel would also run into that challenge. But if we were to format in such a way that we could focus on public input and giving residents the opportunity to sort of openly talk about, whatever's on their mind, we could do that with minimal staff involvement potentially.
Okay, so you mean go back to where we would let our elderly residents and others come out and just have more like we had before the pandemic, when we had our listening sessions as we went around to each of the different districts, but have it on a Saturday at City Hall where everyone could come in. I think we can change to that. I think that would still hopefully give the residents who have contacted me, particularly elderly, about not feeling engaged because of the time. And hopefully we'll hear from them on what their thoughts are. Sounds good.
Yeah, definitely.
I think at this time we'll just hold off and listen to hear what the residents say, and get with staff, and I'll talk with you a little more, and we'll see where we go from there. I think everybody's good with that. Any other comments or thoughts? All right, hearing none. Let's go to the item we moved from the consent agenda, which was, I believe, adoption of resolution R4121. Is that correct?
Yes,
City
sir.
Clerk?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
I guess I would ask if there's any city staff who could address this at this time.
Yeah, Mr. Minor.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Joe Minor, your planning director, and this item is coming to you on your agenda tonight for final approval. It's a recommendation from Bowie Advisory Planning Board to approve a parking space departure for the size of the parking spaces at South Lake's commercial section. And so it's reducing the size of the spaces from 9.5 by 19 to 9 feet by 18 feet. And again, this was reviewed by the Advisory Planning Board on May 11th. We recommended approval of the request. And this is a very simpler request to one the council approved on June 7th for the multifamily section of South Lake. And that will conclude our presentation. I will mention that Mr. Matthew Tedesco is the attorney representing the applicant, and he is here this evening in case there are any questions council may have. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to open up at this time. Any council members, any questions you may have?
No, just a quick comment.
Okay, were you about to say something?
Just a quick
do
comment.
You have a question?
Yes, sir. Just a quick comment. This is kind of along the same veins earlier. I don't have a lot of follow-up on that. Just don't feel that we ought to be in a position that we're compromising the size of the spaces and whatnot. But that's all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Councilman Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to echo Councilmember Wolfrey again. And again, I mean, guys, and to Councilwoman Endeavor Madu, I didn't say, I just, for the record, just want to let it be known, I didn't say that we bow down or give everything that developers want. I'm speaking to this particular project, South Lake. South Lake, this particular developer has come into the city repeatedly making changes to this project. And each change has been lessening the quality of this project. We've gone tonight giving a reduction of parking spaces. That lessens the number of residents or people who can park, regardless of the number of parking, people renting, number of bodies that are there. We have less cars that are able to park. Now we're making the parking spaces smaller, which is an inconvenience to a mother who's getting out, who has baby carriages, a person who's very close to another vehicle and doesn't want someone else's door hitting their door. The quality of the project itself is lessened, is watered down. And it's just my concern that I have multiple residents, and you all have been approached by residents saying, hey, why don't we have Harris Teeter in Bowie? We now have one. Why isn't that Nordstrom's isn't here? Why isn't that we have a Nordstrom's rack as opposed to a Nordstrom's? It's because the lawmakers bow down to the developers and not keeping them to their word. They have received a significant size tip from the city of Bowie as well as Prince George's County, and this project continues to be lessened, the quality. And it just concerns me that we as lawmakers are allowing this to happen when we have a number of residents, one who didn't want the project, and I've been going on saying, hey, this is going to be a fine project. You're going to be proud of the quality of what's coming to Bowie. For heaven's sakes, everyone, we are the city of Bowie. We should be demanding the exception to the rule, the best, not always allowing developers to bring us something that's lesser than Howard County, than Anne Arundel County, and then Montgomery County. And if other parts of the city, of the county, such as Capitol Heights, District Heights, Greenbelt, decide that they want a lesser project or College Park, then by all means, they can go for it. But we should set a standard here in Bowie. We have to stop saying yes. So I'm following Councilmember Wolfrey. I can't support any changes to this project that lessens the quality. Thank you.
Hey, Councilman, I appreciate your candor and your passion. Very much so. I would like to throw a question at this time to Matthew, and that is asking directly what Councilmember Gardner is saying. Is what you're asking us to do lowering the quality of what we are to expect and what we deserve here in Bowie?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, esteemed members of the City Council. For the record, Matthew Tedesco, the law firm of McNamee Hosey, here on behalf of the applicant in this instance, Karington LLC, which is part of South Lake Partners LLC, in reference to BD 1-20. Mr. Mayor, let me emphatically say it is not a watering. This application to reduce the size of a very small portion of the overall parking for the commercial component is not, I repeat, is not a watering down or a lessening of this project as it relates to what the city expected. I want to echo Mr. Councilmember Gardner's comments with respect to the reference Montgomery County, Anne Arundel County, and some other neighboring jurisdictions. As provided in our justification statement, as well as in the city staff report, those jurisdictions that Mr. Councilmember Gardner cited to, as far as why are we not doing things like them, we are. That's exactly what this application seeks to do. In Montgomery County, the standard parking space size is 8.5 by 18. In Anne Arundel County, it's 9 by 16. In Frederick County, it's 9 by 18. In St. Mary's County, it's 9 by 18. In Calvert, 9 by 18. Charles, 9 by 18. And soon, with the adoption of the countywide map amendment and the implementation and effectuation of the new zoning ordinance that was adopted in CB 13 2010, in Prince George's County, the standard parking space size will be 9 by 18. That is precisely what we've asked for only 142 of 2,000 parking spaces. Let me repeat that. Only 142 of 2,000 parking spaces are proposed to be 9 by 18. The remaining of them, saving the compact spaces, which are allowed by code, will be at 9.5 by 19, which is the current standard. The departure that's been requested of 142 parking spaces to reduce the size by 9 by 18 is minimal visually, not perceptive, and relatively inconsequential on any space, on a space-by-space basis. That's directly from the staff. This request has been further supported and approved by the city and the city council for 7 other projects. Bowie Town Center, the shops at Bowie Town Center, Hilltop Plaza, Bowie Corporate Center, Carrabba's, Chili's, Brady Building, and most recently, South Lake Multifamily that you adopted a few weeks ago with respect to the reduction to the size. So while I respect Councilmember Gardner's comments and I respect Councilmember Wolfrey's comments, I respectfully disagree in the sense that this does anything other than align 142 parking spaces with 6 other jurisdictions and with our new zoning ordinance that we are all anxiously awaiting adoption. In fact, when that happens, 1,500 spaces will be oversized because they're being sized pursuant to current regulations. So that, Mr. Mayor, we would ask for the council to adopt APB's recommendation. We vetted this very thoroughly. There was no opposition within the exceptions. There was no opposition at the APB hearing. There was no exceptions filed, and there was no request by the council to review this matter. And we would ask that the procedure 26-58 be followed. Thank you.
Matthew, I think it's important you understand the passion that's going behind this. And I think that is important because everyone is looking for this project that was voted on before most of us on this council ever took over, that we're looking for quality. And we don't want to have any shortcuts or anything else. I think what you just said is that you're really just talking about 142 spaces out of the 2,000. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I just want to reiterate our commitment to quality as far as our expectations and council's expectations of what we plan and are hoping to deliver here. We are completely aligned with the city council in that regard. But yes, 142 of over 2,000 is all this application is.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions by any other council members? Hearing none, I move that we accept the resolution.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, I'm so sorry. Can I just make one quick comment? I'm so sorry. I was here and you just went over my head.
Well, we can,
It,
a second, and then we can go to discussion.
All right, it's moved and properly second. Now we go to discussion. Go right ahead, Councilwoman Ndabamadu.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to kind of state or just make a couple quick comments, just in given everything that has been said tonight. I know this is a pretty heated topic, and it has been for a couple of months. And believe me, I don't think that any one of us are extremely thrilled about this development or are here to welcome it with absolute open arms. So I think that most residents who are listening understand how difficult this particular development is for us and has been for a couple of months. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm just getting a lot of feedback. One thing that I wanted to say, I definitely do understand the concerns of Councilmember Gardner and Councilmember Wolfley. I completely back to where they're coming from. I think that there are a couple of different members on the council that just share a different concern and a different perspective, and that's what makes us all individuals. That's what makes us, great leaders, because we are all able to bring our different perspectives to the table to come up with a more holistic vision. My thoughts on this is South Lake is the development that will define the footprint of Bowie going forward. As you can see, the Bowie Town Center is backsliding tremendously and rather rapidly. Owners filing for bankruptcy weeks ago. I think a lot of residents have seen that, and if you have, the Bowie Town Center ownership has just filed for bankruptcy, and Councilmember Block has been doing a great job in our economic development plan to figure out how we can, get that back on the right course. But what we do have with this particular development, given the concerns, given all of the understandings of the things that are frustrating and making people more upset about this particular development, you have a opportunity to find the future and the footprint of Bowie going forward with this particular development. I completely understand where everyone's coming from with taking a stand, but with all due respect, the time to take a stand would have been when this development was voted on initially. The time to take a stand would have been to not give them a TIF agreement. However, we are here today and we're already dealing with those realities, and those things have come and gone. So while I admire comments Councilmember Gardner brought up, I think that you should have remembered when you supported the initial moving forward of this particular project. So with that being said, Mr. Mayor, I don't have any more comments. I definitely don't necessarily today, given the data points that have been presented, see the reducing quality that this particular resolution will bring, given the data points that were just presented to us, thoroughly articulated. I don't necessarily see how that would be a backside in quality, but if anybody does have any tangible data and metrics how that would cause our community to go backward, free to definitely bring those up. Happy to listen to them and hear them further, but today with the data and the facts that have been presented, I just don't see that going forward. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is Councilmember Gardner.
Councilman Gardner, please go right ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want respectfully, Councilwoman Ndabamadu, I was speaking of you referenced the support. This should have been settled earlier. Councilwoman Ndabamadu, I supported this project in its original form. As I said earlier, this project has been watered down. It has been lessened. This is not the original version that we have been given from the beginning. This project has been altered. The elevation has been altered. The number of units, the quality of this project has been lessened. It is not what we were promised initially. Had I been given what we have in front of us today, I would not have supported this project. So this is not the same project that was presented to us. So I want to speak on behalf of those who did support it and who have the history of this. This is not what I supported, and I didn't support a TIF either. So I'm just respectfully laying out its history, everything here tonight. I understand the developer. They're in the rule. They're doing their job. They're presenting a project to a community, and they're building, and they're selling, and then they're going to move on. That's what developers do. I'm asking, if I were representing District 4, I would want the most I can get out of the developer I possibly can for my residents. Because when you and I are gone, and 30 years from now, that project is going to have fallen apart, looking dilapidated, because the project was built lesser quality. You're not getting what we were promised initially. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council Member. Again, we know your passion on it. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor, please respond with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I retract that aye. I'm on the wrong side here.
Opposed, same favor.
There we go. Nay, apologize. Thank you.
Nay. It happens.
You have the count, City Clerk?
Yes, Mayor, I have a count of 5-2.
All right, motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn and move to closed session. To adjourn to closed session under the statutory authority of the Maryland Annotated Code, State Government Article, subsection 3-305B1, to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials whom this body has jurisdiction, any other personnel matter that may affect one or more individuals.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed, same favor. Motion carries. Hey, thank you to everyone, to staff as always, for your support. I'd like to thank our citizens for being with us this evening and your support as well. And thank you to my council members for all of your passionate debate. And we look forward to closed session now. And again, happy belated Father's Day to everyone, and happy Pride Month as well. Goodbye.